Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the situation in the Middle East, of course, Palestine, and continues to suffer, and the atrocities of Israel. We'll be talking about that, of course. Lebanon also, recently we've seen as far as Israel and of course Iran, and the way that things are looking at this time overall as far as Middle East is concerned. The crisis that seems to be whether it can be curtailed at all is an extremely important question now that we are seeing its effects in Lebanon also, and overall the way that it's the overall spread of this conflict, whether it can in time, even if we look at the situation at this time, be curtailed, if it can be clamped down, and the role of course, UN, the role of organizations all over the world as they continue to watch the atrocities by Israel. We'll be talking about all of this today. I have with me Jauhar Saleem, who's former Foreign Secretary and President IRS. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Nader Alturk, who's Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of the State of Palestine. Thank you for joining us today. Let me go to Nader before I go to Jauhar Sahib here. Nader, overall, what the situation is at this time, could you, of course, we know that the atrocities are continuing. We know that Palestine continues to suffer. The way that things are looking at this time, also, of course, in the background of the recent attack in Lebanon, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to be your guest tonight. First of all, the Israeli crimes still continue since 7th of October until now, and this is nothing new. We have long history of Israeli crimes since 1948 until now, with the support of Americans and British and some other European countries. Sadly, they are raising in their propaganda the voice of human rights when they are actually supporting Israeli crimes in Palestinian territories. What happened right now, the Israelis try to extend their war against Lebanon, against some other countries, but to be clear, the target is not Lebanon. The target is to make the world focus on other territory, to have the opportunity to displace, transfer Palestinian people outside of Gaza, outside of West Bank, to occupy the all historical land of Palestine, to be no opportunity anymore for two-state solution. Is going to be for them only one state, which is Israel, in the whole historical land of Palestine. And if they had the opportunity to extend the borders line of historical land of Palestine to become bigger, to control all that land, to make a greater Israel, they will not lose this opportunity. And I bring to the table what Mr. Trump promised the Israelis when he said in his speech a few days before in the media that when he looking in the map, feeling sad, how Israel, it is very small, and how he can support them to extend and increase their borders to become bigger, and how they can live in this small country. So what we are waiting from humanity, from Muslim Ummah, from all the world, from international society, to support the Palestinian rights, raising the voice of international law, by ending this occupation following the decision was taken by ICG and ICC, by ending the suffering of the Palestinian people, and ending that dealing with Israelis that they are superpower country over international law, over international society. This occupation needs to be ended.
Mr. Alturk, what about, of course, you've spoken about Donald Trump and what he said recently. In the absence of any reaction, for Palestine, any, clamping down on what's happening as far as Israel is concerned, if we take the US out of the picture, I know it's extremely difficult to do so, what are the other options for the Palestinians at this time? Are there any options in your opinion?
The only option, what we are taking before 30 years, that we are making peace attack to have two-state solution with Jerusalem as a capital of the state of Palestine, facilitate the right of return for the Palestinian refugees to their own home territories. But since the raising of Netanyahu as the prime minister for Israelis, he is turned back his back to any opportunity for two-state solution, following the vision of Ishaq Shamir in 1990 when we joined to Madrid peace conference, when he said, Ishaq Shamir again, that he will negotiate with the Palestinians for 20 years without giving them anything. We are in engagement with peace process since more than 33 years, and we're getting nothing. Actually, we only suffer of more crimes, ethnic cleansing, apartheid system, breaking all the rules, killing more and more Palestinians, stoning more and more, looting more and more Palestinian territories, building more and more settlements. This was the price of peace, which was believe of it. The Israelis taking the region for a dangerous point, going to raise war, kill any opportunity for stability, kill any opportunity for peace. We hope so for the international community to take real and serious action against the Israelis before it is too late, because if this conflict increase in the region, who knows the borders of that conflict going to be maybe it's going to be in everywhere in the world. It is very dangerous.
Very dangerous, right? And I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you on that. I'm going to go to Jauhar Saleem Saab here. Jauhar Saab, what also Alturk Saab is saying, and we also talked about, as far as curtailment of the conflict is concerned, like you said, the concern has always been there that it will spread, and we are looking at what's happened in Lebanon recently. As far as curtailment is concerned, do you think that the world is concerned about it at all at this time?
No, the world has shown its concern.
Okay.
I think this conflict is now going to be almost a year long. On October 7th, it's going to be 1 year.
Right.
And we have seen what has happened so far. 44,000, lives already lost, and the suffering that we see there in terms of starvation, in terms of the, the whole Gaza has been changed into a rubble, basically, and there are no basic amenities of life present there. It's a very, very depressing situation, and insufferable in many ways. Now, what the world did, let's see. There have been resolutions in the UNGA.
Yeah.
There have been resolutions in the United Nations Security Council, which are unprecedented, because Americans used to veto always, and they did veto a lot of resolutions this time as well. But eventually, some resolutions did pass. And then, what happened in the ICJ, what happened in the ICC. In many ways, this is all unprecedented, and we saw the international public opinion so against Israel that we, in the living memory, we don't recall that.
Right.
But despite that, the fact is that the international public opinion has been there. The countries have spoken in many, many instances, ranging from Brazil to Russia to China to all over the world. Even in Europe, the countries have been very vociferous, very vocal on that. And then we saw the demonstrations, sometimes encompassing hundreds of thousands of people all over Europe, and in fact in many other parts of the world as well. But the fact remains that the international politics is cruel. There's a lot of realpolitik, and what we see is when a country is very strong militarily, very strong economically, and it has the support of some of the most important actors in the world, a superpower in this instance, because we know that Israel has bipartisan support in the US. Although the US had been calling upon Israel to desist from the type of loss of life which was taking place there, they were asking for containment. We know that they have been involved in intense diplomacy there. Secretary Blinken and others, they've literally shuttle diplomacy taking place. The back channel negotiations where the Hamas and Israel, between the Israelis and Hamas, facilitated by the Americans, along with the Egyptians and the Qataris and Jordan, perhaps, that have been there since months and months now. And there have been many instances where it seemed that an agreement a ceasefire agreement, so to speak, was just on the anvil. But then it did
we
not
see
happen.
another onslaught. And
Exactly.
that's what's happening.
And why is that? The fact is that this is about, they say all politics is domestic. You see, Netanyahu is besieged in Israel politically. He has cases against him in the courts there, and people say that as soon as he leaves power, whenever that happens, he might end up going to jail. So he is endeavoring in all possible ways that the conflict does not cease. He wants an incessant continuation of hostilities because it helps him politically. And for instance, recently the conflict has been expanded to Lebanon. Hezbollah has been involved.
Yes.
Something that in the beginning of this conflict, Israel had made a lot of efforts, and the Americans had supported those efforts to ensure that the conflict did not widen at that point because it didn't suit Israel. But now it probably suits Netanyahu, and now they are doing that.
Let me go to Dr. Adnan Sarwar, who is an IR expert. Dr. Adnan, can you hear me? Ji, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Ji, Dr. Adnan, we're talking about, Ambassador here is, explained how this is, essentially whether it's domestic or not. The question is that, we talk about realpolitik, we talk about the fact that there is, the fact that it's a powerful country, the fact that militarily, economically, it's very powerful. But is it too naive to ask this question that any country that has that kind of power can, come out and, start this onslaught on another country like Palestine? Then if we see what's happening, if we see the widening of the conflict also to Lebanon recently, then where does the buck stop in your opinion? Will it stop at all?
Well, you have a very sensitive question. I would say that this kind of an all-out display and the destructiveness of the military machine is totally not acceptable. And though you see the countries of the world, they try to keep their defense updated, but that military power is for the defensive purposes, Article 51 of the United Nations Charter also says that just in the case of war of defense, one can use its military prowess. But Israel is setting that kind of the deadliest example and the destructive most example that there is going to open a Pandora box, God forbid, in the future for any other warmonger country to be doing the same against any weak nation which may be clamoring for independence or there's some other big issue. So I would say that in those countries particularly which are supporting tooth and nail, like United States, and now there's a change of leadership in UK, they have been a little cautious, Germany, etc. They are also not doing at all some good job. They are immorally involved and militarily supporting, so they are actually strengthening the will of Israel, because these days you see in the United States there's a presidential campaign going on. Both the presidential campaigners are trying to assure and reassure Israel that they would be standing with it, the former President Trump in particular. So this is what you see has really made Israel so criminal. And I would definitely say no to any such kind of a power play, particularly against helpless people, the children, the old, the sick, the women. You see, the other day, one woman who was going to give birth to a child was killed, and at that moment, just imagine, when it was a attack on a school. So, not at all, you see. And yes, one thing is there, that they may have their day-to-day, but the history would never ever, forget it and would not forgive it. And I'm very sure that finally Israel is destined to fail in face of the people who are also all out, who are also not afraid at all. And Israel has been accepting somehow between the lines that this has become a stalemate.
Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Nader Alturk. Ji, Mr. Alturk, can you hear me?
Yes, sister, please.
Ji, there's, can you, as far as the hostage situation is concerned at this time, there is the numbers we have: out of 251 individuals taken hostage during the initial attack, 97 are still believed to be held in Gaza, including 33 who are reported dead. The kind of, as far as ceasefire is concerned, the options of ceasefire, do you think, like we are talking about the American elections, maybe after the American elections, there's a chance that, things can move towards that? So many people have died. Again, there's so many hostages. Every day people continue to die. Every day women, children continue to suffer.
First of all, I like to explain something. Ceasefire, it is only American lie to buy more and more time for the Mr. Netanyahu and his criminal government to kill more Palestinians, continue their ethnic cleansing, continue their war, crimes against humanity in Gaza and West Bank. If the Americans are really serious in ceasefire, why they use veto 3 times against ceasefire in the United Nations Security Council? If they are serious in ceasefire, why they still supply more and more weapons for the Israelis to kill more innocent Palestinians, more bombs, more air fighters, more, it is daily the Americans' shipments for more and more weapons arrive to Israelis in all the ways between their hands. If the Americans really serious in ceasefire, why they are giving more and more time for the Israelis to continue this? Why they make the public opinion of the students who are against the war in the American university and fight them and try to make them silence and make them lose their constitutional law of freedom of speech and their human rights principle of freedom of speech only because they are speak about Israel and Israel's crimes in Gaza and West Bank. This is only a lie. Americans try to make us buy it, but we are not accept any lies anymore from Americans or from anyone else. If they are serious in ceasefire, they need first to obey the international law, obey the international resolution, facilitate the decision of international community court and like ICG and ICC, which speak about end the Israeli occupation to Palestinian territories, accept the end of that occupation, raising the rights of the Palestinians to get their own freedom, which is struggled for it since 1948, by facilitating their right to establish their own independent state on their own homeland since more than 12,000 years. They need to use them as its capital. They need to facilitate the right of return to Palestinian refugees according to international resolution 194, which they are waiting for this right since 1948 until now. They need to agree to freeze the Israelis' membership in the United Nations because it is a state refused to follow and obey the international law according to the responsibilities to their membership according to Resolution 273. We need this to be to see the international society raising the voice of international law, obey the international law, obey the human rights principles, obey the international resolution. This is very simple. If the Americans and other countries are supporting Israelis, follow the international law, then all this crisis is going to be end once forever.
Right. Let me come back to you. Jauhar Sahib, I think what Nader is saying is, of course, he's saying that the Americans, if they were serious, we would have a different result, and we all know that. We also know that, the buying time or tactics that the US is employing. But the question is about options, right? If a country like the US continues to stand by Israel, which is essentially what they've been doing, then the world, whether it's the UN or other organizations, is left with very little options.
I'll start with this quote of famous Greek philosopher Thucydides, who said, the strong will do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. Now, this is the basis of international politics. If you read, when you study international political theory, you start with this. And that was so valid 2,000 years ago as it's valid now. This is how the international politics work. Having said that, I would say that, at this point in time, or 6 months back, it's not that the US objectives and the Israeli objectives matched. I think, because you see, we have to remember that Netanyahu is a hardliner. His whole politics, and he's been the greatest survivor of Israeli politics. He's been prime minister for so long and so often. And literally like a cat has 9 lives, so many times that he's encountered political crises and everything, but he still survived. And a lot of times he's had problems with the American leadership as well. We saw times when Obama and he were not even on speaking terms. Even now, you would recall when he came to the US and addressed the joint session of the Congress, Kamala Harris did not go there. He did not attend that. Although she did meet him subsequently. So I would say that their perspectives are different. Americans, they wanted this conflict, first of all, to be contained. So from the very inception, they tried for that, and their diplomacy worked in that way because, at that time, they did not want Hezbollah to get involved. Also, they did not want Iranians to get involved directly, so they even moved their naval fleets, naval assets there. And that bit was, and then they started the shuttle diplomacy. It was in their interest to have an early ceasefire. It was not in their interest that, like Israel literally became a pariah state in the world, and Americans, were seen as siding with the pariah state and sort of lost so much face in the world, lost so much image in the world, because America's soft power is very important for the US foreign policy. So it's not, and for Biden in particular, for instance, for the Democratic Party, their constituency includes what? Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, the young, the women,
And the way that we've seen people come out all over the world, and particularly in the US, is unprecedented for this cause.
And they're having an election year, and see, and it's a very close elections. So the Democrats could have, they could have just lost the elections on this one point, basically. And that is why I think they were striving very hard to have some sort of a ceasefire, in place, in effect. And until August, President Biden is on record saying that the ceasefire agreement is closer than ever. Even recently, a few weeks back, we've been having similar statements, and the negotiations are still going on. So I do not think that the American and Israeli perspective and objectives in this particular situation are the same. I think there are a great deal of differences in perceptions and the objectives in this particular instance. But at the same time, American support to Israel is a cornerstone of their foreign policy. That is a bipartisan support. Whether they like it or not, they cannot just withdraw that support. They can try to push Israeli leadership. And we have seen that Netanyahu, out of the Israeli prime ministers, has been the least susceptible to the US pressure for some reasons. So that is, I think it's an American conundrum as well.
But why do you think, let me go to Dr. Adnan. Dr. Adnan, as far as the US is concerned, if we rule out, or if we for a minute discount the US, what other options does Palestine have? What other options does the world have in trying to counter this? And even the US itself, like Ambassador Saab here said, losing face is a huge cost to them, is it not? I mean, the way that they've lost face all over the world now.
Well, one very redeeming factor, as Ambassador Jauhar also has told very clearly, is the public pressure of the United States and other countries of Europe and North America and the world, who are now standing for the first time so resolutely for peace in Palestine. And they are very vocal. So one cannot really discard this important card that the U.S., which would like to be seen finally as a country which is a country which listens to the voices of the people. The peaceful Jews are also protesting against it. So they are of the view that if this continues, that would be something very, very dangerous, and not for the Palestinians, but for the Israelis also inside Israel and everywhere. They would be susceptible to attacks of every kind by anti-Zionist elements all over the world, the Muslims particularly. So I think that while the Biden administration is on the way out, there was a statement also that Biden administration would like to finish this deadly conflict to some kind of a stable ceasefire. But on the other hand, you see, I'm of the view that as Mr. Erdogan also had said 15 days or 30 days earlier, that there has to be now a military alliance of the Muslim and the Arab countries, finally, as there is NATO. I mean, if this is a reality that power calls the shot, as Israel is proving, I mean, the resolutions of the United Nations Security Council and General Assembly, World Court decisions, etc., human rights associations, prize, but they are on their own trend. And they are doing this in the name of their defense, which has become offensive clearly. So I think that somehow just diplomacy from the power of weakness would not work. So if some kind of an emergency meeting comes into being in the headship of the King, Salman also has said that they are not going to be normalizing talks with Israel for the first time. A categorical policy statement has come 2 days ago. So one, that Israel would be isolated, but in addition, there are fronts. So still, you see, on the real politics side, I say that severing of the diplomatic relations, lowering them down, lowering the business with them, those who are already with them, some even the non-Muslim countries, as well as, you see, recalling the investors, leveling that to the charge DFA's level, so that some real pressure is there, and coming up with some military alliance, though it would not make happy many in the West, United States, but this is the call of the day. And if we keep on sleeping over it, I mean, everybody is doing it, and the Muslims suffer, and their sons and daughters get killed most brutally in a butchery. So then what else we are waiting for?
Fair enough. Thank you so much, Dr. Adnan Sarwar. Thank you for your very valuable input. I know you have limited time. Nader, do you think this is a possibility if we talk about an alliance of the Arab countries, we talk about an alliance of the Muslim world uniting for the cause of Palestine? Of course, they are, very much, it's a hurt, it's painful for all Muslims all over the world what's happening in Palestine. There's no denying that. And do you think that alliance is a possibility? And that is something that may make a difference to what the world is, witnessing, the cruelty and the barbarity?
First of all, sister, let me disagree with my brother, Ambassador Saleem, and his philosopher. We speak about the stronger have the right to do whatever he wants, and the weaker need to suffer as long as he need. Because if we follow that philosopher, none of the nation, none of the people around the world getting independence against imperialism and that superpower countries who was occupied their own territories, include many countries in our region. Second, we are optimistic. We are maybe some of the governments of the world are against Palestinians, but all the people of the world are with the Palestinian cause, with the Palestinian rights of freedom and independence. Day by day, the public opinion around the world changes in favor of Palestine. Since 7th of October until now, we see millions of Europeans and Americans on the street marching in favor of Palestine against the opinion of their leaders who are really only slaves for the Zionism. We see how the congressman was standing for speaking for and giving respect for Netanyahu and his crimes when he speaks and giving only lies because they're only just slave for Netanyahu and for Zionism. We are not accept as a Palestinian to be slave for anyone except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. According to that, we are in struggle for our freedom, our independence since 1948 until now, and we continue until we win or getting shahada. This was wasiyah of our leaders, Yasser Arafat, and this is a procedure of our great leader, Mahmoud Abbas, that we continue our struggle in all the ways we have, by diplomacy, by negotiation, by international organization, whatever weapons or power we have between our hands, we will use it in favor of getting our independence. What happened for Muslim Ummah? You see how the world has changed. The British government before the election was completely against the Palestinians. The new government right now, it changed and still step by step taking a procedure to at least stop supporting the Israelis. We see so many European countries like Spain, Norway, recognize Palestine as a state. We see how they extend the Palestinian position in the United Nations to become not only a non-member, it has become a state member, which be giving us more rights in the international organization. We are very optimistic. The occupation never stay forever. Occupation always have time to end. Whatever they are strong, however who is defending the strengths, and you can see as example, South Africa apartheid system, it was an unclear country like Israelis. With that, where it is now, the original people of South Africa raise their voice, continue their struggle for independence, and they could control again their own country and become their own country, not the settlers who came from nowhere, from European countries, and nowhere to occupy their country.
Right.
This is what we are going to see. Same is going to
I don't think
happen.
there are two opinions on that, Nader. Let me come back to you. Jauhar Sahib, I know that, of course, Nader is, speaking for all Palestinians and all Muslims when he says that things will get better. There's no denying, the hope, and there's no denying that, the prayers for that. But at the same time, I want to talk a little bit about Iran. We've also seen what happened in Iran. We've also seen the relationship. What do you think that that alliance that Dr. Adnan talks about can manifest?
Yeah, firstly, I would just mention that the quote that I had sort of, elucidated upon, basically explains or describes the cruel nature of international politics as it is. In an ideal world, of course, things should have, should take a different course. And I had mentioned earlier that the world has spoken, the international public opinion was there.
Yes.
But in stark violation of the international public opinion, in stark violation of the United Nations Security Council resolutions, in stark violation of UNGA resolutions, in violation of the ICJ rulings, in violation of the ICC decisions.
Yes.
I mean, we see a continuation of that. And that is basically, that is what tells us, like, that, unfortunately in 2000 years since this theory, was kind of, in some ways,
we've seen we've seen the cruelers, of course, the powerful show their power, and of course, I mean, it's very clear, and the way that they target those that are less powerful, and that is. So we wish that
because our Western friends always talk about a rules-based world, and we want that.
Yes.
But it's very difficult to have a rules-based world where you have these type of contradictions. Yeah. Now, coming back to your second point.
Iran, yes.
Iran. There was this threat of this conflict widening because, we saw those tit for tat exchanges between Iran and Israel, the attack on the embassy, and then from Iranian side, all those projectiles, and then the attack. There's a series of those unfortunate incidents which could have been very dangerous. At that time, in my commentaries, I had mentioned that, when the last Israeli action took place, I had said that, in my view, the Iranian leadership is very sane and sanity will prevail, because if they react to that, instantly, and sort of without due deliberation, then things could get very tricky. And that is exactly what has happened. The Iranian leadership has not reacted instantly to to the last provocation when Ismail Hania was assassinated in Iran, because that was an insult for Iran,
of course,
because he was their guest, regardless of sort of what he is designated by the Israelis or other countries. There was a great diplomatic affront for Iran, and despite that, okay, they as I had suggested in my analysis, we saw that they showed that restraint. So because of that, the conflict did not widen. But then again, as per the Western analysts, Hezbollah, Hamas, even the Houthis, many other organizations, the Westerns see them as Iranian proxies in that region. And when there is sort of an expansion of conflict, let's say first it was Hamas, but now it's more and more Hezbollah. The Houthis were there occasionally. There was some sporadic skirmishes with the Houthis as well, because they were sort of affecting some attacks, and there was some response, a very sort of kind of, I would say, very strong response from Israeli and the American side. So it is very important still, I would say, that this conflict does not widen, because if it widens, then it would involve countries, and then it would sort of because the emotions within Muslim countries, they're already very charged, because after seeing all that is happening and everything, there's a great deal of polarization that we see in the world now, and the world which is beset with many conflicts now. The Ukraine conflict is there. This is there. Others.
Kashmir is there,
of course. Jammu and what is happening in the occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So we do not want, and the world economy, global economy is very fragile right now. Sort of, so in that situation, I think it's extremely important that these negotiations, which the Americans are conducting, or facilitating or mediating, whatever term you use, between Israelis and the Hamas, they succeed because and there is a ceasefire. I think the sticking point now is because the Hamas wants a permanent ceasefire. The Israelis, they're talking about a temporary ceasefire. They're talking about 2 or 3 phases, and the whole, I think the gaps which need to be bridged are about what happens the day after, after the ceasefire takes place. Who controls Gaza in terms of the boots on the ground, and there are various formulas going around, and sort of there's this, and in terms of the hostages, how many hostages to be released when, and everything. These are now the
modalities themselves are going to they're also themselves quite challenging.
Yeah, and in great details, the sort of the nuts and bolts are being negotiated. But this new sort of front with Hezbollah has put that on a back burner now.
Yeah.
But I believe that it stays very important that those negotiations succeed, because otherwise, this is a very sort of volatile situation, and we do not want to see a trigger, so far through intense diplomacy that and through sort of restraint and sort of sanity of leadership.
Do you think there's a chance? I mean, I know that there's limited time left, but do you think there's a chance that if it's not Donald Trump and it's Harris, it's going to perhaps be it's better for the Palestinian cause?
What we see in terms of policy differences, what we've seen is Kamala Harris, the previous statements before she even became the presidential candidate, have been more balanced than the statements that came up from the Trump's quarters. And we all know that Trump's son-in-law is sort of, he's Jewish, and sort of, he was involved in these Abraham Accords, which were not very sort of, okay, they did work, but they were not very sort of, sanguine, or they were not very sort of, positive for the Palestinians, because, they, in some ways they were literally marginalizing the Palestinians, and they were sort of, they're basically going away from the two-state sort of, solution that we all talk. And after this conflict, that two-state solution, that idea has come back, in many ways. Even everybody's talking, the Americans have talked about it, all the Muslim countries, the Saudis have been, and recent the statements coming from Riyadh that, unless there's a two-state solution clear and sort of, the clear path through that, they will not normalize with Israel. So that is there. Well, but the Trump side, we know that Trump is sort of, is more of a hardliner, so he's probably has, and he's a better relations with Netanyahu as well, On the other hand,
so you're saying that it might not, while it might not impact the overall policy, but it might be, a softer sort of, image, and it might be better, more balanced if it's
in terms of nuances, definitely, I think the Democrat side would probably be sort of, more positively nuanced, of course, but that is predicated upon the fact that there's a bipartisanship support in the US for Israel, and that is, they say the security of Israel is a cornerstone of the policy. And whatever Israel does, the Americans only go, only sort of, limited distance in terms of criticizing or sort of, pressurizing Israel, because that is the sort of, that is the restraints that they have within the system as well.
And like you earlier said, it's the cornerstone of their foreign policy, their relationship, certainly. Unfortunately, I'm out of time. I would like your comments, your last comments, Nader, of course, what we all hope and what we all pray for Palestine.
First of all, for Harris and Trump are same two sides of the same coin. There is no difference in the American policy, whoever in power, the Republican or the Democrat. Second, I like to raise a promise I usually like to mention for all our brothers and sisters in Pakistan and in the world, also supporter of Palestine. There's a promise from Palestine for all the world. Soon, inshallah, from the rubble of Gaza, we will build the liberty, freedom, independence of all humanity, not only Palestine and Palestinians. We are optimistic. We are strong by your support. Your support is needed. World opinion is changed day by day. And with your support, it's going to be more stronger, more effective to change the world and to have better world for the next generations. These double standards need to be end. American ruling in this way by supporting their own cause need to be end. The independence of Palestine going to be sooner. One day soon, we will pray together in Aqsa Masjid as a Muslim and in the holy churches of Palestine for our brothers, Christian brothers and sisters in the world and in the region. This is a promise from Palestine. Inshallah, soon we will be together in the independence. Palestine with the independence capital of Palestine was going to be the capital of all humanity soon, and the flag of Palestine going to be the sign of independence, liberty, and freedom of all humanity. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for being with us, Jauhar Saleem. Thank you for joining us. Nader Alturk, thank you so much for being with us today. Dr. Adnan Sarwar, thank you for your time on this very important cause that is very close to our hearts. Of course, like Nader said, we hope that very soon Palestine will be free. We hope from the tyranny, from the atrocities that Israel continues to commit and the world continues to watch. But of course, we know that Israel is not on the right side of history, and while this tyranny continues, those that raise their voice for the cause of Palestine should continue to do so, because we are seeing it resonate all over the world. We are seeing it resonate in the West. We are seeing it resonate in the East. All over the world, people have come out like never before. It has been unprecedented, and it must continue, and it must besiege the world with what is right and what is, of course, complete tyranny at the hands of Israel. Thank you so much for joining us today on BuzzFeed.